Well, to look at the fallout from the Alberta election and what it might mean across the country, I'm joined now by Laurie Williams. She's a professor of political science at Mount Royal University in Calgary. Laurie Williams, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, it's my pleasure, Martin.
Well, first of all, the first order of business that Jason Kenney says he has, and that is to rescind Rachel Notley's climate change legislation. What exactly do we know about what his plans are?
Well, what he's planned instead is basically to focus on large emitters to reduce their emissions, or what he calls the intensity of their emissions. He focusing on things like carbon capture, and primarily to focus on either, well, two things. One is to generate a little bit more technologically and environmentally friendly production of energy. And then also to reduce the taxes for businesses in the hope that that'll stimulate the economy and sort of generate a little bit more of to incentivize environmental initiatives. And basically get the message out there, because there's a lot that's been done in Alberta with respect to being more environmentally friendly, a lot of innovations that have happened. And one of the things that he's talking about is just getting that message out a little bit more clearly. Now, it was done by Ed Stelmach a few years ago, but I do think it's a worthwhile thing to do. I mean, even living in Alberta and speaking to people that are in the industry, I'm regularly surprised by some of the innovations that have taken place that I just hadn't yet heard about. But so that part of it, I think, makes sense. The more problematic part is, so if you want to challenge the information that's being given, let's say by environmentalists, I can see that being quite productive. If you want to challenge them in court, that's just going to antagonize and possibly generate sort of broader sympathy, popular sympathy for the environmental position, and make Alberta look like it doesn't take the environment seriously. So I think it's a pretty delicate balance that's got to be struck there.
And inevitably, it would seem that would have him at loggerheads with Ottawa, in the sense that there is a potential that Ottawa. I noticed that McKenna, the environment minister, hasn't commented on his plans yet. She says we will wait to see the details, but that potentially puts him at loggerheads, and potentially has Ottawa imposing its backstop, saying that Alberta is now not going to be living up to, like the four other provinces, not living up to its standards for carbon targets.
Right. There's no question that Jason Kenney's plans will not qualify under the federal legislation. So when the carbon tax provincially is repealed, then the federal carbon tax will kick in. And of course, that'll be part of the campaign against Justin Trudeau that's now being coordinated, I think, by Conservatives across the country. And Jason Kenney has been one of the leaders of that already and will continue to do that.
One of the things that we've heard of outside of the province, and that is Rachel Notley's plan to buy or rent hundreds and hundreds of railway cars to help transport Alberta bitumen to Tidewater, to markets. But Jason Kenney said that he's going to reverse that. He's going to cancel those plans. Why is he doing that, or why will he do that, and what are the implications of that?
The reasons are not... There's a lot of controversy about whether that's a good idea or not. I think essentially what he is sort of focusing on is on other ways of stimulating the economy. In my view, the primary focus, if you can reduce taxes, you can reduce regulation, but people aren't going to invest or come and bring their money to Alberta unless there's money to be made. And the primary factor in terms of stalling the economy right now is the difficulty getting energy to markets, getting world prices for them. So this may be one that he reconsiders, because it's not just going to cost in terms of not being able to get as much energy to market. It's also going to cost in terms of canceling the contracts. There will be a penalty associated with that. So I think there are a lot of questions to be raised about that. It may be one of the positions that he gives a little bit on, or sort of puts his own stamp on, but simply to cancel it, if it means a reduction in the amount of oil getting to market, I think could be problematic. But again, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Premier-designate Kenney has also promised to hold a referendum by 2021 on equalization payments. Prime Minister Trudeau was asked about this yesterday, and he's already sort of gone out there. What Prime Minister Trudeau has said is that Jason Kenney was a member of the Harper cabinet, and he signed off on the new regulations and the new formula for equalization payments. Where is all this going on equalization?
It's more symbolic, I think, than anything else. So you're quite right that there was a new equalization formula brought into place by the Stephen Harper government, and Jason Kenney was in cabinet, and it was generally seen as an improvement. It was a fairer formula than had existed before. But what Jason Kenney's trying to focus on, and we saw this in his comments to Quebec last night, what he's trying to focus on is, look, Alberta is contributing a great deal to this country economically and in terms of tax revenues, and we want something in return. And so his appeal to Quebecers was meant to say, look, you're getting benefits from us. This is ethical, cleaner oil than you would get other places. You should allow more to come through the pipelines and come to you through Energy East, essentially. That's not being received well in Quebec. No surprise there, because the concerns of Quebecers are not. It's nothing against Alberta. It's not about the equalization formula. It's about lac mégantic and concerns about safety. So I think a more effective strategy on that would be to focus on how pipelines are safer, and this could actually be a net benefit environmentally as well as economically to Quebec.
You study the Constitution. Is it constitutionally possible for one province to unilaterally say we're withdrawing from equalization, or we want to unilaterally change the formula?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't get that part of your question. No,
Yep.
it isn't. I mean, it's again, just I think it's political. And so what he's primarily suggesting is that if we don't get pipelines built, possibly if Justin Trudeau were thinking about not building a pipeline because Alberta isn't meeting the environmental sort of part of the deal that was involved there, this is meant to sort of incentivize the federal government to make sure that pipeline does get built. The federal government has lots of incentives for doing that already. And if Jason Kenney is too combative on this and support for the pipeline goes down, then politically it becomes more difficult for the Prime Minister to defend. But I'm not sure that Jason Kenney's primary focus at this stage of the game is what happens when he repeals the carbon tax in Alberta, or even when the federal carbon tax comes into place. He's got a longer game. He's looking toward October and having a new government in place so that the federal carbon tax is no longer a factor.
Last question, and this is one more of perception and your hunch, but watching Jason Kenney, one of the things we've been struck by is that it's been months now that he's been firing with all cylinders at Ottawa and at the Trudeau government on the open attack. Is it your impression that might change in the first few weeks and months of his government, or is he just going to continue on full bore? Has he sort of hit his stride, or will he maybe change things now that he's actually come to power?
That's an interesting question. I think it's certainly played well in Alberta, where Justin Trudeau was quite unpopular. And when you're in opposition, you can say all kinds of things. But even if there's a new government in October, there are good reasons for working with Ottawa between now and then. And so I think on some files it would be wise to be willing to work with and cooperate with the federal government. But on those files where there are disagreements, to be very tough, as he's promised to do. And he's got a lot of support here for doing that. But again, I think the approach has to be balanced or nuanced, because simple negativity and attack is not likely to be as effective, particularly on sort of lower profile issues where Alberta could get benefits if Jason Kenney were to work with the federal government on some of these files and issues. But again, his goal, I mean, he just won, I guess, his third election. He won as leader of the Progressive Conservatives, then leader of the UCP, and now as Premier of Alberta. The fourth election he's looking at is the one in October, where he hopes to unseat Justin Trudeau. If that doesn't work, I think we'll see an interesting set of dynamics happen, probably a shift in strategy at that point, simply because the reality is that the federal government is going to be what it is for another 4 years. Certainly being tough, but also recognizing the reality of needing to work with that government. But I think the other thing we might see is Andrew Scheer, if he does lose the next election, he'll have to resign as leader, and people will be looking for a replacement. And I think for some, Jason Kenney will be high on that list.
That would be yet another campaign for him to launch into. Listen, I want to thank you very much, Laurie Williams. Thanks for speaking with us.
Thank you.